It's quick, luxurious, and off-road capable, making this one of the best all-around vehicles that you can buy for 2025. Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's the 2025 Subaru Outback. But more specifically, it's a limited XT in a color that Subaru likes to call dark mahogany pearl, which in person is basically just a really rich, really nice darker shade of purple that has a lot of metallic flake. And even on a mildly overcast day like today, it looks really nice. The color really pops in whatever sunlight condition you're in, but it's not perfect. Even though it is a really nice, luxurious off-road turbocharged wagon, it has its flaws. So today I get to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of this off-road limited wagon that's the last year of the 6th generation of Outback before the new generation comes out next year, to help you guys decide at home if this might be the right vehicle for you, so you can expect to see a walk around, all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60 on GPS, and then my final thoughts. And huge thanks to Twin Falls Subaru Group for letting me borrow this one for the day. They sell under MSRP, they ship all over the country, and I'll link this one below if you're interested. Otherwise, let's dive right into this review. And if you guys like Subaru, dark mahogany pearl, or my video, please be sure to like my video. That small act of kindness, it goes a long way and I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. If you're new to the Subaru Outback, there's certainly a few things that you should know. First of all, the Outback is basically the wagon version of the Subaru Legacy sedan. That sedan first came out back in 1989, and it sold fairly well. The Outback originally was basically just a trim level off of the sedan, and then in basically the second year of the Legacy sedan, the Outback became its own model, and it graduated from being just a trim level. So the first Subaru Outback for North America came out for the model year 1995. This is the end of the 6th generation. This generation lasted for 6 years, starting in 2020, and now obviously dying for 2025, before the next generation comes out, which is supposed to be a couple inches longer, a couple inches wider, and a complete redesign. So I guess we'll know more on that soon enough. But this one, it did have a mid-generational redesign in 2023, adding a little bit more black plastic cladding, or basically just changing the front fascia compared to what the last one was. It had an infotainment screen upgrade and a few other subtle changes, but really the generation has been basically the same, and the powertrain levels and options have been about the same for the last 6 years. These are really popular in North America. We buy about 150 to 170,000 of them every single year as a country, and they're assembled in Lafayette, Indiana. So they're homegrown, which is a nice benefit, and there's basically one Outback for almost every reasonable budget, because the base model for 2025 still starts at only $29,000. So surprisingly, there was not a price increase compared to the last model year. And then a maxed out loaded one at the very tip of the iceberg, like a Touring XT with all the options, isn't really going to get to be any more than about $45,000. And that's a seriously nice, luxurious wagon at that price point. But this one, it's the limited XT. It's basically the 8th highest trim level, just below the Touring XT. So you should know that limited comes before Touring, basically meaning it has 90% of the fancy bits. And XT on the back just means that it's the turbocharged version versus the naturally aspirated 2.5-liter boxer. So this one, MSRP before destination delivery, is roughly a $40,000 vehicle. But after destination delivery, a few other options. This one actually is over $42,000 roughly. And then Twin Falls Subaru is discounting it, at least $1,000 I'm sure you can get off. So they aren't cheap. They're still cheaper than the average new car, but I do think that these offer a lot more than the average new car. And if you're new to my channel, I own an Outback. I have an Outback Wilderness. I've owned it for almost 3 years. So I'm a believer in the Subaru wagon. I think they're pretty good, but I'm gonna try to stay as non-biased as I can. But if you're someone who doesn't mind spending about $41,000 on a loaded Subaru Outback, what do you get for that price point? Well, you get wood, you get leather, you get glass, and you get upgraded speakers, to name a few of the things, in addition to most of the Subaru safety features that this has. And if you're new to the Outbacks, you should know that across the board, across the lineup, they all come with really bright LED headlights, but this one also has really bright LED fog lights, blind spot monitoring, and most of the other adaptive safety features that are going to help you avoid and prevent being in anywhere near an accident taking place. But of course, the best way to avoid an accident is to always pay attention, be focused, and to never take your hands off of the wheel. And a lot of people who consider an Outback buy it because they're a really good all-around family vehicle. They're well-sized, but they're not overly bloated, and they do a lot of things well. And for most people, maybe taking it to a trailhead, doing some mild, soft roading, or occasionally pulling on or off of a curb. These do really well. I honestly don't know how many times I've pulled a Subaru on or off of a sidewalk, but it just feels like a speed bump. It really doesn't affect it too bad. And even parked right here, you can see the departure angle, although not fantastic, this thing easily clears basic height sidewalks. But overall, it's about a 16-foot long vehicle, roughly 6 feet wide and about 5.5 feet tall. This one with the turbo probably weighs about 3,900 pounds. The wheelbase is roughly 9 feet, so it's actually really planted and stable on the road. It has a 390 final drive ratio, so it puts the power down quite well, while having a full-time, always turning Subaru symmetrical all-wheel drive system. It can do a full circle in about 36 feet, and overall, it just handles the road really nicely. But unfortunately, the payload capacity on this entire vehicle is only 900 pounds, so you can only have about 900 pounds worth of occupants and stuff in your Subaru Outback. This one with the turbo can tow up to 3,500 pounds. And then being a non-wilderness trim level, it basically has the free included but lower capacity fold out roof rails. So for snowboard gear, for light things you're hauling on the roof, this is going to do a pretty nice job. But if you want an upgraded system, you might want to consider the wilderness or something in the aftermarket world. Lastly out here, if you're new to Subarus, you should know that when you have the proximity key and you lock the vehicle, the gas door, which is located on the passenger side, it locks, so no one's going to be siphoning your fuel. When you unlock it, it easily pops open. On the Outback, you get an 18.5 gallon tank, which is actually pretty large for this type of class of vehicle. And then being the turbo model, you unfortunately only get 22 city, about 29 on the highway, which I would say is pretty accurate. In my Outback Wilderness, I probably average about those numbers, but if I'm going 65 miles per hour or slower at highway speed, I can actually sometimes get into the mid-30s, so this little engine can be quite efficient. And then it has a Yokohama Adva GT tire. I have a video of one of these driving in the winter to show you how this tire does on snow and ice if you're interested in that. Otherwise, it does okay with about 930 seconds of tread. It's a 225 60 18, and I'm glad that this is only an 18-inch wheel on the Limited and it's not a 19, because you don't really want to lose any more sidewall than that on your off-road wagon. But this is the proximity key, so you can pay for the My Subaru app, get a remote start, get the ability to track your vehicle, to unlock it, to lock it, to do all those things. But otherwise, even when the vehicle is locked, you can use the proximity key features to unlock it. Sometimes they're kind of slow though. Something that's kind of cool when the vehicle's locked and you have the key in your pocket is this little light lights up and it actually reflects onto the ground quite decently. But when you open up the door panel on the Limited, just like a lot of other Outbacks, it's basically just a soft touch black door panel with a bunch of different shades of materials. It's kind of weird how Subaru isn't a little bit more uniform, but it doesn't really stand out, and in person it looks pretty good. I just wish the cup holder was bigger. But this one has the Harman Kardon speakers, which do sound more bassy, and there's more depth to this than the factory system. But otherwise, medium-sized Subaru on the door sill. The all-weather mats are not yet installed. You do have rubberized pedals, hood release, fuse box, a few options right here. There's some of that wood trim, lighting stock, trip reset, and then your power adjusted, bolstered heated seat. And these Subaru heated seats are really nice. They hold up really well in my experience, with a power moonroof up top. And then sitting inside here, it's really nice. The dashboard doesn't feel like it goes up too high, so you have really good visibility forward facing, down the sides, anywhere you look. And all these materials, again, are really comfortable. The horn, I like that it extends down to here. It's decently loud. It's a little bit lower pitch than the Forester, which I appreciate. Paddle shifters on the back, leather wheel, it's heated. And when you fire it up with the push button start, the needles dance. And if it's at night, you'll see the steering responsive headlights do their little theatrical display. But otherwise, you can go through the info right here and check everything out. There's a few decent features. And then this is your 11.6-inch screen. Kind of slow to respond. Every once in a while it might freeze. You have a few different widgets up top. Otherwise, you have auto start stop, auto vehicle hold, your heated seats, your ventilation, your electronic parking brake, a few plugins, a wireless charger which works so poorly that I removed it from my own. You have a backup camera on this, but not a 360-degree camera. And I missed it on camera, but the passenger side mirror angles down when you go into reverse. Otherwise, you have a few cup holders and then a 2-stage center console. But when these are new, they don't really drop very well. It's going to take a few times if you guys can see this. All right, we're maybe going to have to do this off camera. Look at this little thing. Well, there we go. I wasn't intending to have to fight with it for that long, but there we are. Now you know what to expect in case that doesn't drop right away on your own. And then this one has auto-dimming mirrors, it has the compass, it has the garage door controls, and this button is to turn off the auto-dimming mirrors, which is kind of like an electronic feature in the mirror display, but it works really well. You have LED lighting, this can come off and slide, and then you have the controls to tilt or slide the power moonroof, and then your sunglass shade right there. Otherwise, it's a pretty nice place to be, so let's turn it off and we'll hop in the back. The back of the Outback, the door panel basically has the same theme. The rear seat, the bench, the 60/40 split, it's just as comfortable as the front. Subaru did such a good job designing the rear seat. They definitely did not forget about the rear seat occupants. And also you can recline these seats just like you can on the Forester. Check that out. But even when they're all the way up, at 5'11", around 190 pounds, that's my knee room. Map pockets, phone pocket or pamphlet holder, ventilation, heated seats, a few plugins down there, and a pretty decent center armrest. So Subaru really does a good job designing all the seats, all the occupancy areas of the Outback. Let's hop out and I'll show you the hatch. I think the back of the Outback stands out just a little bit in that you know that it's a Subaru, but it doesn't really draw any unnecessary attention. You have the third brake light, you have the rear glass wiper, you have basically all the features that you need, and then quite a few ways to get into it. You can either push the button underneath the Subaru emblem, you could climb through the back seats, you could push the button on the dashboard, you can use the remote, and in some cases you can even wave your hand in front of the Subaru emblem and it'll open up that way. And that's all without breaking any glass. But when we do open it up, let's see how quickly it goes. Oh, I always forget. These won't open with the remote if you have the vehicle running, which I currently do because it's so hot out. But there we go. It opens up pretty well. Back here, when the seats are up in the back, you have about 34 cubic feet. And then when you drop them with the handle, you actually have about 75. So it's pretty easy to car camp. That's how the privacy shade works. You can also store it underneath where the spare tire is. But overall, it's actually quite spacious. You have some bag clips, a pocket, the speaker right here, some tie downs. And then these are all those all-weather mats, which you guys saw earlier, were not installed yet. And then here is where the sunshade would go. There's your scissor jack, your basic tools, your eye bolt hole to plug in when you need a basic recovery. And then when you lift this up, you have the spare tire down there. You only get a full-size spare on the Outback Wilderness, but overall, the back of the Outback is very capable, practical. You have a lock and lower button, you have a lower button, and then if you guys look closely, you have a pin code button. I have a video on how to set that. It's a really cool feature to where you can get into your vehicle without having the keys on you. And you can even deactivate the remote, throw that in there, lock the vehicle, and then get in later, like if you're kayaking or hunting or fishing or whatever you are doing. But with that said, let's move on to the passenger side. The passenger side really doesn't have anything that you haven't already seen before. You have a little bit different switchgear right there than what the driver would get. Subaru on the door sill, mat's not installed. You're missing one of the power features. My backpack though, it's having a good time in this heated seat. And then it's nice that the Subaru Outback has extra storage above and on the side of the transmission tunnel. Lock and glove box, the window stickers in here. You have a plug-in over there. Not a ton of extra room, but enough to do the basic things you might need with a glove box. And then you can see this one right here. Overall, $42,000 and some change, but you can buy it for about $41,000, I believe. Anyways, let's come around to the front. I'll pop the hood and I'll show you what the 2.4 liter FA turbo engine looks like. It's a nice little power plant. It really scoots this thing along quite well. Under the hood is a 2.4 liter turbocharged boxer engine. The Garrett turbocharger is at the bottom of the front of the engine, tucked away so you can't really see it or hear it on this trim level or on any of the turbo Outbacks. But the intercooler's up top, all of your reservoirs are up top, your fuse boxes, your battery, your induction system. You even have an internal style hood scoop to get to the air to cool down the intercooler. But the boxer engines are easy to work on. They're pretty simple, they're pretty straightforward. You can see where the block is split right down there. And then these turbo ones do not have the thermal control valve that people are worried about on the naturally aspirated ones, potentially being a failure point. So overall, this is a pretty good engine. Honestly, 20 years ago, I would have never bought a Subaru. Right now, that's all we drive is a brand new Forester and a current gen Outback turbo. But these have really come a long way. Subaru is good at refining their vehicles. They don't just scrap it and try over with a brand new block, a brand new engine every few years like some other automakers. So the current gen Subarus, they seem to be very reliable and very easy to work on, very straightforward, and a lot of parts are interchangeable. So Subaru really has come a long way and they design good vehicles in the modern era. So let's drop the hood, take it for a drive. Initial driving impressions of the Limited XT Outback. This is a really good vehicle. It's super comfortable. The leather wrapped wheel really does feel nice in the hand, and I think a little bit nicer than my Outback Wilderness. Overall, seating position is fantastic. These leather seats give you enough bolstering that I think most of the population is going to have a good time, especially if you're below maybe 6'3" or 6'4". I think you'll fit in here really well. And then visibility is fantastic. The windows are huge, although not as big as the Subaru Forester. The Outback still has better visibility than the average crossover, at least in my opinion. And even though it's 16 feet long, the rear view mirror, which is not digital on this limited XT, like the Touring XT, it still does a really good job. And when you have to get on the brakes, maybe I'll give it about 1/3 of a pedal input. Slows down really well. There's not a ton of nosedive like an old body-on-frame SUV or truck. And then it gets right up to speed with maybe 1/3 of the gas pedal. The CVT does a good job. It's really cool how you can be accelerating in this while the RPMs are regularly, linearly dropping. The CVT is honestly a pretty smooth iteration for this current year Outback. But let's do a little bit more of a brake test. Take a corner. I'll probably take it fast enough to get a little wheel chip. Yep, I don't know if you guys could hear that on camera, but I could hear that and I could feel it. This thing does not handle like a WRX or like a more serious sports car contender, but it flies down the road just like that airplane flies through the air. And honestly, I'm having a pretty good time in this. I really like Outbacks. I drive one myself. I've had one for almost 3 years. They're just really good vehicles. They do a lot of things well. Between the full-size back seat that you guys saw earlier, all the cargo capacity, although I do wish there was a little bit more storage up front, and I really don't like that wireless charger for why, hence why I removed it in my own Outback. This is just such a good vehicle. And even with the standard 8.7 inches of ground clearance and these Adva GT tires from the factory, this is a really good handling car, super smooth. The 9-foot wheelbase really helps this to smooth out any imperfections in the road. There's gonna be a nice little bump right up here, and I'll be quiet so you can hear what happens. Yeah, really not too bad at all. It absorbs it nicely. And honestly, this is a great driving vehicle. I think you guys should all test drive one if you haven't already. And the speakers, the HKs, which right now they are turned up on the bass. At least I noticed that when I went into the configuration of it when I got into it, because I thought, wow, these sound good. I wonder if I can turn the bass up. And it was already up +9. But overall, really good vehicle. Go test drive one for yourself, and let's get to the 0 to 60, and then we'll wrap it up with my final thoughts. 0 to 60, the limited XT. Keep in mind, density altitude's 5,600 feet, so we are over a mile above sea level today. I'm gonna brake rev it. You can see that the traction control light is on because the system is off. Let's see what it can do. Pulls really hard when it hits 4,000 RPM. You can't hear any turbo noise, but that was still a really good run. 7.03 true seconds, or a high 6 without rollout. Not bad. My final thoughts of the limited XT Subaru Outback of the 6th generation. I've now driven a few dozen 6th generation Outbacks. I own one myself, and I think they're a really good vehicle. For the foreseeable future, I'm planning to keep mine, but I don't think it's for everyone. I think this would benefit a lot of people. I think it would make life a lot easier for a lot of people because it's a vehicle that has passing power. It has enough acceleration to have fun if you have kind of that enthusiast gearhead drive. It also has the practicality to take care of your family, to haul your kids or your parents around, or whoever you have in the back seat. It just does a lot of things really well, and you usually don't have to compromise on it because there's really not a whole lot to compromise on when you have such a capable, luxurious wagon, and for a price point that's cheaper than most mid-sized trucks these days, cheaper than the average new vehicle. I really think a wood, glass, leather, turbo Outback really offers you quite a lot, but don't take my word for it. I'm just a random guy you met on the internet. Never listen to them. Just check one out for yourself, drive it for yourself, get your own impressions, your own experience behind the wheel, and I wish you guys the best. If you like anything that you saw today, please consider liking my video. That small act of kindness seriously goes such a long way, and best of all, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Subscribe if you haven't already. Comment your thoughts and opinions below. I can't wait to hear from you and to see you on the next one. Until then, see you guys.